Hey there, everybody. How you doing? You having a good week? I hope you're having a good week. Once again, I'm going to continue that discussion I was having with you about fame. And today I will pick up where I left off. And I believe I left off talking to you about how I was practicing with both bands. And it was pretty much 7 days a week. I was playing 7 days a week and working full time. I guess what I can talk about really quick is when I first got together with that singer guy, Mort, that I was telling you about. And I think it's worth talking about because it was like, wow, it was one of those moments where, woo, I've heard other professional musicians talk about, like when they first got together and, the electricity in the room, and it was just magic. Let me tell you, it was, okay? I mean, it was like... the first time I jammed with that dude, it was like I finally was home. I mean, that is really how it felt. And his voice, let me tell you something, okay? This guy, Mort, I'm telling you about, okay? He had the best voice of any singer I've ever heard in person, okay? He was definitely by far the best singer that I've ever worked with, okay? He's, in my opinion, the best singer that ever came out of Cleveland, okay? He had a magic voice, okay? He was the best singer I've ever known. Or he might be one of the best I've ever heard. Okay? I'm not sure how he's doing now because I don't really pay attention. I've kind of tuned out, to be honest. Because he's still going. Okay? The band that we started is still going. Okay, with other members, but I'm no longer a part of it, and I no longer really pay attention to anything that they're doing. But when him and I first hooked up, it was just like electricity bouncing off the walls. I mean, songs started to get written instantaneously. They were coming out of us like, it was like magic. And let me tell you, magic, okay? We had... as far as I'm concerned, we had all of the intangibles that you need to go all the way. I mean, it was very clear to me from the very first time we ever played together that him as the singer and guitar player and me as the drummer, as long as that was the setup, whoever else was playing in the band, it didn't really matter. Like, we had a very solid thing going. Okay? And I can say that with absolute truth and certainty. I know it. I know it. And that's not to say that we were both perfect people. Okay? Because him and I both had our own idiosyncrasies or whatever. But personally, I was willing to overlook anything like that because this guy was that good. And I knew that if I stayed drumming for this guy, there was a future there. Okay? He was that gifted and he was that good. His voice was like a perfect mix, okay, of, and this is exactly what it was, okay? This is exactly what he sounded like. A perfect mashup of Peter Murphy and Peter Gabriel. If you took those two voices and you mashed them into one person, that's his voice. Okay? And, I had seen Screw Tractor play before. I mean, I was familiar with them a little bit. I never met him, I never talked to him or anything, but I had seen them play live. I had listened to their music. I was a fan of their music. Okay, I thought his voice was great. But aside from the singing, okay, I can say this too. That this dude when I first saw him playing, okay, he looked like a rock star. I mean, this guy had it all. He had the whole package, okay? He had the looks, he had the voice, he had the lyrics, he had the sensibility. I mean, this guy was the real deal, okay? And it's kind of like, like I was saying in the last episode, as time goes by, if you're a musician and you're serious about what you're doing, okay, and time goes by, like in your scene, in your city, what happens as time progresses is that pool of musicians gets smaller and smaller each year. You start out when you're 14, and by the time you're 25, 26, 27, pushing 30, if you're still going, all the other guys who are still going are just as serious as you are. It's almost like it's a way of weeding out the ones who aren't as serious, and the sole survivors are the guys who are the real deal, and I'm happy to say I was one of those guys, okay? I mean, obviously I'm 46 now, so I'm still doing this. I'm still going, I never quit. I never stopped. And neither did he, to this day. So, that's something I think is worth talking about for all you musicians out there. I'm sure there's some of you who know exactly what I'm talking about. It's nature's way of, separating the boys from the men. I mean, you really, at a certain point, if you're of a certain age and you're still going, then you should pat yourself on the back. Because it's a serious thing to do. It's a serious gamble to take with your life, And a lot of guys are willing to do it. And he was one of them, and I was one of them. Now, I've also heard it said by famous musicians, very famous musicians like, Steve Tyler and, Joe Perry from Aerosmith, talking about how, the great bands, they all have two things in common: a great singer and a great drummer. All of the greatest bands of all time have those two things in common. And I was pretty confident, starting a band with this guy, that we had that. We had a good drummer and we had a good singer. And like I said, we had all the intangibles and we had all the tangibles. I mean, we had the gear, professional equipment, we had professional experience, we were serious players, and we had natural gifts as well. And when you put those together, wow, we really had a special thing going. Okay, so I'll stop talking about that because I think I've driven that point home. But that first practice that we got together was really a magic moment in my life. Okay, now I was still playing in slow bob. Very important to remember that. And, we were good too. And basically what had happened was we had decided in slow bob that we were going to start writing a new album. Okay, and that meant really strict, regimented process, and I kind of found myself at that time, regrettably, I found myself kind of getting tired of that, okay, because I was in this other band where things were so much more free-flowing and natural and melodic and, basic 4/4 and not pop songs, but, not math rock either, a little more appeal to a larger audience. And that was appealing to me, okay, at that point. There was much more potential there. At least that's how it seemed at the time. And I was wrong. Way wrong. But, so, Slow Bob had booked a bunch of shows, months in advance. And what we decided we would do was stop booking shows. And once we played that last show, we wouldn't do any more live performances. And we would only be writing. We wouldn't do any more live shows. Which didn't bother me so much because I was in this other band and we were starting to play live. So it worked out pretty good for me, time-wise and schedule-wise. So, time marched on. We played those shows, and then, finally we get to the last scheduled performances of Slow Bob, which we actually had 2 shows in one day, and they were both pretty big shows, and very memorable, which makes it all that much sadder that Slow Bob ended, okay? Especially all these years later, because we really left off on a high note as far as the live performance is concerned, because we didn't realize it at the time, okay? But these 2 shows we were doing this one day were going to be the last shows that we played live together, and that sucks. But basically what it was we had a live performance. There was a show, I had mentioned a couple episodes back that there was a radio station called WRUW, and they had a show called Live from Studio A. The bands would come in and play live or whatever on the air, right? Well, they also had every summer a show called Studio Rama, and it was broadcast live on the radio, and certain bands from the city would be selected to come play Studio Rama. And as far as I was concerned, it was kind of like an honor to play Studio Rama. It was really kind of like one of those things I always wanted to do, and I was never asked to. So finally, Slow Bob was asked to play, and it was a big deal. There were a lot of people there every year. It was a big event. It was a lot of fun. Anybody who was anybody was there. Every band was there. Media people, disc jockeys, all kinds of video producers. Everybody was there. It was held outside. It was like a festival kind of atmosphere. A smaller, though, low-key kind of thing, but it was really an event every year in Cleveland, as far as I was concerned. And so we were scheduled to play. So that night we also were scheduled to play at a very large club in Cleveland called the Odeon. It was a big place, maybe 3,000 or 5,000 people, okay, and which was big for us. And we were opening for Machine Head and Corrosion of Conformity, and so it was going to be a busy day. And so we played Studio Rama, and we just threw down. We had a great show, okay? Because by that time, we were just rock solid, and we were. And, we had an audience and everything, and we came out and just dropped it like a bomb on the place. And so we had to hurry up, though, after we were finished. We couldn't really hang out and talk to people or anything. We had to load up right away after we finished playing. We had to head over to the Odeon to load in and do sound check and all that kind of stuff. So we did that, and we got over there, and we played the show. We opened the show, and the place was absolutely packed. It was rammed, okay? And we played so well. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we had already played that day. So we were like warmed up, and we were just like red hot as soon as we hit the stage, and we just threw down. And I remember after we finished playing that show, I had one of those moments when the drummer, Reed Morgan from Corrosion of Conformity, came up to me after we were finished, and he was just like, "Dude, you rock, man. You effing rock," and that made my self-esteem go up about an inch, that was one of those times when I'll never forget it. It was meaningful coming from him, this freaking awesome drummer, coming up to me, this professional, famous drummer, coming up to me and complimenting my playing. Haha, that was freaking great. I'll never forget it, ever. And that's not braggadocio. That's humility. Trust me, that dude is awesome. So, I remember that show really vividly. I remember after we were finished, we had a box of CDs that we were, planning on selling. And just for some reason, I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed this box and I started to toss CDs out into the crowd. And, the bass player came over and grabbed a couple, and the guitar player came over and grabbed a couple. And we just started like frisbees, throwing these CDs out into the crowd. And the crowd loved us, and that was our last show. I didn't know it. We didn't know it at the time when we were walking off that stage, and the crowd was just going crazy. Okay. We didn't know it, but that was the last time that we were going to do a show together. It's kind of sad because it was really, really great. If we were going to go out with a bang, we certainly did. But we knew after that show that there would be no more live shows, that we would buckle down and start writing new material. And, around the same time, this other band I was in started to play live anyway, like I said. So that was okay. I was cool with that. I was still getting my, live experience. And, there was a lot of fun at that time and all that. But with Slow Bob, back to Slow Bob, we did start writing. And, I got to tell you, I still have some cassette tapes of those practices of when we were writing, and we recorded everything. Slow Bob recorded everything in the studio when we were rehearsing. We would record ourselves playing and then take a break and listen to what we did and kind of break it down and analyze it, and maybe we should change this or that. And it was every time, it was like a machine. We just had it down. And the material that we came up with for our follow-up CD, let me tell you something, okay? It's really a tragedy. It's a tragedy that music never made it to the public, because we wrote a great album. The follow-up CD to And Through the Order was going to be phenomenal, okay? It was all the growth, all the refinement, all the experience rolled into these new songs. And it's just, like I said, a tragedy that music never made it to the public. But it didn't. And the reason that it didn't is because of this, okay? And this is the reason, ultimately, why I quit Slow Bob, okay? This was the event. Okay, there was a friend of mine. His name was Tom Rojak, okay? He was a guitar player from a death metal band from our city. And just over the years, him and I, when we saw each other, there was a genuine respect and admiration for each other as players, okay? Philosophically, we were probably polar opposites, okay? But for some reason, there was this mutual respect. And every time I saw him, he treated me with dignity and respect, even though he disagreed with a lot of the things that I liked, and he disagreed with where I was coming from philosophically, and vice versa. For some reason, with this guy, we both gave each other a pass. And every time we saw each other, it was like, hey, man, it was just it was a good relationship, It was a good relationship. And I didn't have a whole lot of that with a whole lot of other musicians, really. Okay? A lot of the time, philosophies and things would polarize people. But for some reason, with Tom and myself, that never happened. Okay? And he was a good guy. and he was a total, goat, dirt meddler, kind of death metal, black metal dude, and I was more of this other thing, over here. But he was just one of the greatest, one of the funniest and kindest, nicest guys, just a nice guy. Well, one night, Tom partied a little too hard or something, and he wound up dying. He died. And, it wasn't like we were best friends, We weren't super close or anything like that. But I respected him. And I was sad that he died. I was really sad that he died. And, some friends of his were putting together a show, like a benefit concert for his family. Okay? And as soon as I heard about that, I was like, oh, we have got to play. We have got to play this show. So, I go to slow bob practice and I say to the guys, hey, this friend of mine died. They're doing a benefit concert for him, and I would really like to play the show. No. Really? Like, what about just one show? We'll just do one show, this benefit concert for this guy who was a friend of mine who died. Let's just do one show. What do you think? No. Absolutely not. We're writing new material. Yeah, I know that, but this is me. I'm asking you guys to do me a favor here. Let's play this benefit concert, right? Because he was a friend of mine. No, absolutely not. Okay, now, I didn't quit the band at that very moment. I didn't walk away with my gear that night. But it was a couple days after. Okay? After I had really kind of tried to give the guys an opportunity to change their mind about doing this one favor, really, for me and for this friend of mine who had passed away. And they were absolutely unwilling to do it. For whatever reason. They just were not going to do it. And that was the end of Slow Bob. I came back a couple nights later. I loaded my gear up into my car. I said sayonara. Good luck. Love you guys. I hope that you have a great career. But I will never play with you again. And, of course, by then the relationships had gone right into the toilet anyway. So the whole thing, it just kind of fizzled into this hot mess, of emotions and, animus and all this stuff. And this was just the final straw that broke the camel's back. It was it. That was it. And there was no turning back. So I quit. I left. I never came back. And as far as I know, I think they tried to get another drummer in there, and they played with another drummer for a while. But I'm not sure how long that lasted or whatever. But by then, I was kind of tuning it out. So that left me with this other band, who was busy writing, getting ready to record, and playing live very frequently. So that's where I'll leave off for now. So this is Mike Bostwick from Pipe Choir Records signing off. And remember, folks, if you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy.